But if you're somebody that like fell and hit the back of your head on concrete or something like that, and everything goes south, or fell on the ice and stuff, like, I mean, if you smash the back of your head, it's really, really common that you wind up with stuff like SVD and hard vestibular lesions that people miss. That's just not that rare.
Welcome to Life After Impact, the Concussion Recovery Podcast. I'm Dr. Ayla Wolf, and I will be hosting today's episode where we help you navigate the often confusing, frustrating, and overwhelming journey of concussion and brain injury recovery. This podcast is your go-to resource for actionable information, whether you're dealing with a recent concussion, struggling with post-concussion syndrome, or just feeling stuck in your healing process. In each episode, we dive deep into the symptoms, testing, treatments, and neurological insights that can help you move forward with clarity and confidence. We bring you leading experts in the world of brain health, functional neurology, and rehabilitation to share their wisdom and strategies. So if you're feeling lost, hopeless, or like no one understands what you're going through, know that you are not alone. This podcast can be your guide and partner in recovery, helping you build a better life after impact. This episode is the second part of my conversation with Dr. Glen Zielinski from Northwest Functional Neurology, where he shares valuable information on sound sensitivity, also known as hyperacusis, and a condition called Superior Canal Dehiscence that is often missed in concussion evaluation. He then shares the great lengths he went to in remodeling his clinic space in order to make it a true healing space for people with brain injuries, taking into consideration the colors, lighting, sound absorption, and of course, a lake in the backyard for the clinic mascot, Gustav Jr. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. What other things are you doing for hyperacusis specifically? Because I know that plagues a lot of people that have had concussions.
Well, okay, so when you look at what happens with hyperacusis, there are a few situations that I actually see quite a bit that people missed. Okay. And one of them is something called superior canal dehiscence. And the idea of SCD is that so your vestibular system has semicircular canals and otoliths, right? And the semicircular canals are these little fluid-filled tubes, these little hoops with hair cells and fluid. And the idea is that when you turn your head quickly, it takes a second for the fluid to start to move, so that bends hair cells, tells your brainstem, "Hey, my head's turning this way," so it can fire appropriate responses. Um, there's three of those on each side, and the anterior canals, the superior canals, the bone at the top of those canals is really thin. Like, you're lucky if it's a millimeter thick at the best of times. And the thing is, these are pressure sensitive systems, so they need to be encased in bone. And for a lot of people, and this is pretty common with tall, thin women, for some people, they don't even have bone there. They just have a bunch of membranes. They never fully knitted that chunk of bone together, and it's just a pile of soft tissue. It's just thick connective tissue. Now, the thing is, if you stub your head, like if you smash your mastoid bone or something like that, you can blow the top off that bone, or you can pop those membranes and create a little fistula. All right. And now what you have is a resonant cavity. And that resonant cavity can make everything loud. And generally, when people have something like this, they don't just hear the world loud. They also hear like their voice loud inside their head. And they get things like pulsatile tinnitus. They can hear their heartbeats. And they look like they've had the world's worst concussions because they just can't respond to any sensory stimulation. And there's a really simple test to figure that out. And they're also like super pressure sensitive and altitude sensitive and stuff like that. And the test is you just take a tuning fork and you tap it and you get it vibrating, but have it vibrating just slightly, and then pop it on their kneecap and ask if they can hear it, because they shouldn't be able to hear that. They should just only be able to feel it. But if you have a resonant cavity that's developed around there, then they're going to hear that vibration. They're going to hear the tone. Right. Now, the thing about SCD, that's a surgical fix. All right. You can do a bunch of stuff to try to stabilize all the consequences of that. But unfortunately, that's a surgical issue. Um, there was a surgeon in Portland back in the day who was one of the people that discovered SCD and did more SCD surgeries than anybody on the planet and everything else. And then when he retired, the guy that took over his practice was the top SCD surgeon in the world. He's out of Rutgers now. But he used to send me all of his patients for rehab and vice versa. And he was telling me that SCD has an extremely high mortality rate. And the mortality rate is just from suicide because people just can't stand all the input and they can't stand the sound, and it's just totally crazy making for them and stuff like that, right? And the reason I'm harping on this diagnosis is that if this is what you're dealing with, even though skull-based surgery sounds like a terrible thing to put anybody through, you wake up after the surgery and you feel like yourself. Like it's a game changer if that's the deal. Okay, so there's that. There's also a condition called a perilymphatic fistula, which is a variation on the same theme that sets people up for tons of hyperacusis. My point is that both of those are hard lesions and they require some pretty thorough diagnosis, and they're extremely commonly missed. Like we see I see a bunch of these people all the time, and they've usually seen 20 plus providers by the time they get in to see us.
And then, in terms of getting an actual specific image of the inner ear to try to diagnose that, can it still get missed on an MRI?
MRI, absolutely, because MRI is the wrong image. So what you need to do is a high resolution temporal bone CT that also looks at the internal auditory canal. And that's an image where they do these tiny fine little cuts, like half millimeter slices going through, and they orient the beam so that you can actually see it. And if you see the images on these things, you'll literally see, here's this hoop, here's this bone, there's a chunk right there that's missing.
Got it. That's another reason why, again, some of my patients, they're like, well, I got a specific MRI for my ear and it was normal. And yet they're still having all these symptoms that are just, kind of smells like SCD.
Yeah, SCD is really, really common, right? And again, that when I say really common, it's really common in my practice because my practice kind of self-selects for the stuff that nobody else gets to fix, right? Um, but the thing about that, I mean, it's still considered to be a rare condition. But if you're somebody that like fell and hit the back of your head on concrete or something like that, and everything goes south, or fell on the ice and stuff, like, I mean, if you smash the back of your head, it's really, really common that you wind up with stuff like SCD and hard vestibular lesions that people miss. That's just not that rare. Um, as far as hyperacusis goes, the other things that have a tendency to mess with people, I mean, there's a little muscle that basically tightens your tympanic membrane in response to loud noises, and that's brainstem driven. And if there's some brainstem pathways that aren't working effectively, then it can be really difficult for you to contract that muscle. And as a consequence, like you just can't attenuate loud sounds. That you can figure out by looking at different cranial nerve functions and see exactly where that issue is and find ways to directly stimulate that. I find that kind of stuff, when we see it, responds really well to specific types of electrical stimulation. One of the things that we see really commonly, and this isn't just about hyperacusis, but if you're like light sensitive and sound sensitive and visually motion sensitive, and you've got tons of anxiety and things like that, and if you're like somebody that, you drive and you stop at a light and you feel like you're still moving forward and that kind of thing, it's really common that what's happening is that you've got one side of your midbrain, the top part of your brainstem, firing way too high because you can't inhibit it correctly any longer. And that can be from a midbrain lesion, or that can be from a descending basal ganglia problem. Um, and the diagnostics on that, you put somebody in the dark on infrared, you have them look up and you'll see one eye come in and get stuck or go into like convergence retraction, nystagmus or something like that. That area of the midbrain that's wound up in those situations is the primary relay for light and sound, and it's the primary output for stress. And people that have that issue, they're usually having tons of anxiety and they can't sleep, and things like vergence. They always feel like if you look up, you feel like you're moving forward, and all kinds of stuff that just doesn't seem to make any sense until you can tie it all together into one little nut and go, that's the area of the brainstem that needs the help. And there's great ways to fix that. I mean, we fix that stuff all day long, but it's challenging to figure out. But once you see it and you know what to do about it, you can usually make that go away pretty quickly.
I love it. Do you find, okay, going back to the vibration on the knee, are you finding like 100% of the time when someone says, yes, I can hear that then when you send them off for the proper imaging, that's what they're seeing is the SCD?
I would say 80% of the time that's what we see. And I think that 20% is based on people not quite understanding the instructions on that test.
Sure.
And the thing is, if you do it multiple times, it becomes less reliable. So really, you're looking at you got to figure it out on the first or second attempt. And if you have to explain that to somebody like 5 times, you're like, no, 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 no. I know you feel it. I just want to know if you hear it, right? By the time that's happened, you've changed their system enough that it's probably not the most reliable test.
Gotcha.
But again, people with SCD, you know, you should be able to go, okay, you take your tuning fork, you tap it. Now you don't hit it hard. You don't want to give them the big loud noise, right? But you tap it, get it vibrating, put it in your hand. You should be able to tell that you can feel the vibration there. Put it on one side, they don't hear it. Put it on the other side, they hear it. And the side that they're hearing it is the side of the increased bone conduction that comes from having a resonant cavity next to your hearing apparatus,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Got it.
And it's very reliable,
Okay. I'm going to start
right?
using that. I've got somebody coming in next week that I need to do this on immediately. Yeah. Cool.
Mm. You'll usually find that with that same person, if you do like, like a Weber and a Rene
Uh-huh.
test, if you stick a tuning fork on that mastoid, they're going to hate it. They're going to run for the exit. And that right there immediately tells you that, yes, there's something hard in there. If they've got that plus the resonant cavity thing, then you'll know.
Yeah. Now, there aren't very many surgeons that actually perform that surgery, are there? Imagine trying to do something good for your body, like make a high protein smoothie for breakfast or after a workout, only to find your protein powder is full of junk. Heavy metals, artificial sweeteners, and chemicals you can't even pronounce. It is frustrating when you try to do the right thing, but instead you just end up adding to the toxic burden in your body. As someone who cares deeply about what goes into my body as well as the patients that I work with, I believe that what we consume regularly needs to support our health, not silently sabotage it. That's why I use Puri. Their protein powder is made from clean, high quality ingredients, and it's third party tested for heavy metals and contaminants because they don't just say it's pure, they actually prove it. You can find collagen peptides, whey protein, and plant-based options on their website. Check them out at puri.com, that's PUORI.com, and use the code LIFEAFTERIMPACT for a 20% discount on your first order.
Let's put it this way, there aren't that many good ones. Um, the thing about that surgery, I mean, it is neurotology. So anybody that's trained in skull-based surgery should at least, I mean, they'll be aware of the procedure, but this is the kind of thing where you want somebody that's really good at it. So I was talking about a dude named Ashley Wackham, who's yeah, and Wackham's an interesting name for a surgeon, right? But he was in Portland. He'd done more SCD surgeries than anybody on the planet, and then his daughter moved to Jersey, so he was like, "All right, well, let's just take a chair at Rutgers," and off he went. So, I mean, I have lots of patients where if it's something complicated, like something seriously complicated, I'll still send them out to Jersey and have them go and see Ashley, and he'll put them back together. And that's a challenge because they can't fly because altitude messes them up,
Yeah.
right? And after the surgery, they can't fly for like basically a year because you need to make sure that the bone patch that they're putting in has an opportunity to fully stabilize and stuff like that. So they're like taking the train to get there and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But anyway, but they come back and they're in different humans.
Yeah. Wow. And then tell me a little bit about your clinic, because when I got to shadow you, you were at your other clinic. And since then, you have bought this building and completely remodeled it in a way that you were, really thinking about your patients and their experience as you created this amazing place. You've won 2 different architectural awards, the Best Small Healthcare Facility Award of 2020 by the International Interior Design Association, which is the highest award somebody can get, as well as the Honor Award of 2022 from the American Institute of Architecture. So tell me all about your space and the thought that went into it.
Uh, the thought that I ended with was, "What do you mean it's going to be $1 million?" Okay, so here's the deal. So I bought this building in at the end of 2016, and look, actually on my birthday in 2016, I gave myself a multi-million dollar birthday present. And then yeah, so my wife's been looking at me going like, so what do I get? What do I get? Right? But anyway, so did that, thought I'd be in by the middle of 2017, and we didn't get in until the end of 2018 because we gutted this place and we ripped it apart. And when I first started the design process, I found these architects that were just, the coolest architects I could find. They'd done like some of my favorite wineries, and they did a spectacular job on a friend's house and stuff like that. So I hooked up with them and told them what I wanted, told them what the place was about brain injury and stuff like that. And they were like, okay, we'll get back to you. And then they ghosted me, and I didn't hear from them for like 3 months. And I was just about to sign a contract with somebody else when they called me up and they're like, okay, we got it. We need a meeting. And they came in and they presented this amazing thing to me. And I was like, that's mind blowing. Can we do this? No. How about this? Can I move this over here? No. Can I do? And then they just cut me off and they're like, you don't understand. We spent the last 3 months combing the literature to figure out exactly what it means to have a brain injury. And for example, we figured out that there's this one Pantone shade of forest green that in the literature has been shown to be the most calming for people that have got photophobia. And then we figured out that the literature says that the auditory frequency that tends to be the most aggravating for people with hyperacusis is like 2.4 kilohertz or something like that. And then we found this company in Germany that makes this felt that we can get made in that color that absorbs at 2.38. And I'm like, wrap the clinic in it. And they're like, well, that'll be $500,000. And I'm like, wrap half the clinic in it, and et cetera, et cetera. So my building used to be a Starbucks, which was interesting because it smelled like coffee for a year. But it has this huge atrium with like, a 40-foot ceilings or 45-foot ceilings and windows up top and all this stuff. And somebody with vertigo, I mean, that's the waiting room, right? Somebody with vertigo sitting in that space, they would just melt down. They'd have a panic attack, right? So what these guys did was they built like this virtual reality model of the space. And then they found this way to create vertigo simulating software, and they put the software on, and then they walked through the model, and they found every space in the building that was messing with them and giving them vertigo, and then they just played with the shapes until it was gone, right? So if you walk in and you sit in this atrium, you'll see like there's these whacked out shapes for all these bizarre floating light towers that they built. So I've got like this big light thing that covers about two-thirds of the atrium space. So you still have the ambiance, you still have the height, you still have the natural light and everything else. But then there's this weird, bizarre shape that I can't even describe. And it's a light cloud. And Tim, the architect, was just sitting there going like bending it until it made him stop wanting to puke. It's okay, that's the shape. And then it was like, let's do that with a coffee table, and let's put plants in the coffee. And anyway, so they did that through the whole space. Um, and it's amazing. I mean, like people walk into my clinic. Like the thing about this space is that it's a therapy. The space itself is a therapy. All right. And it's spectacular in that regard. People walk in, you can just see as soon as they walk in for the very first time because they're in like meltdown mode. They're in full, sensory flooding, overwhelm mode and everything else. And they walk in and they close the front door behind them and they look around, and then you can just see people have their first deep breath since their injury. They just like chill. And the space is just incredibly therapeutic.
Wow. I didn't
We've
know that was going to be such a cool story. I thought you were just going to say, oh yeah, we
Oh yeah.
dimmed the lights a little bit. That turned into a whole nother story.
Oh yeah. No, it's great. You need to come and hang out and check it out.
I want to. You also have a big pond in the back too, right?
Yeah, so I own a lake, which is sort of weird. I never expected to be able to say that. But so we have our big waiting room up at the front, that's where all the pseudo chaos is. And actually one of the I think the biggest compliment I can give the architects is and the designers is that it's extremely common that we'll just be totally slammed, completely running our asses off 45 minutes, an hour behind. Everything's we're just the staff is just in battle mode. And then I'll get into a room with a patient. They'll be like, "Oh, you guys aren't very busy today, are you?"
Wow.
You know what I mean? Because the space is just chills everything. Like it's amazing, right? But anyway, so in the back we built a specific lounge just for our intensive patients, right? And that faces out onto the lake. So it's like this crazy idyllic space, and everybody goes and hangs out outside. Um, we had we had a goose named Gustav, who was a Lake Oswego legend. He was this Chinese goose. Um, he'd been living in the pond or the lake or whatever you want to call it forever. I mean, they're only supposed to live about 12 or 14 years, something like that. He was there for like 23 years. Everybody knew Gustav. And then Gustav unfortunately got taken down by a coyote
Oh,
last year. And everybody in town lost it. I mean, he was getting like written up in the local papers and stuff like that. And I was like, well, I can't let that stand. So I had to get another goose. And then somebody told me, Gustav had a mate for years and they just followed around. And so then I was like, okay, I guess I got to get Gustav a mate. And then I was on this website looking up how I, like promote shipping for geese. And I saw these things called runner ducks. I'd never seen a runner duck in my life. They're the most ridiculous, hysterical looking things you'll ever see in your life. They're like little T-Rexes that run like this.
oh
They're
my
really
gosh.
fast. So next thing you know, I had like 8 runner ducks, right? And and then unfortunately somebody pointed out to me, if they're not wild, you can't just cut them loose because they're not waterproof yet. You have to keep them indoors for 6 weeks. So I had 8 ducks and baby geese in my garage, and I would never advocate anybody do that because the smell
Oh
is just
no.
beyond belief. But anyway, so ultimately, yeah, ultimately I pawned them off on a staff member, and they were able to raise them for the last couple of weeks. But now, so the point is that they all live out in the pond, and I'm using them as a a great. I almost use them diagnostically because my primary exam room, where I meet all my new patients, is at the back of the clinic. So there's like, here's the intensive lounge, there's this little hallway, then here's my space, and there's steps right here going out into the pond. And they've figured out that anytime they hear somebody, I don't know if it's about hearing it. Maybe they just do it all the time anyway because they figured out that it's going to work for them. But Gustav and his wife, Gustav Jr. and his wife, and now their kid, they have a baby. They sit out there and they just honk at us nonstop. So if I'm in with a new patient, I can immediately be able to tell if they can inhibit because there's Gustav like screaming at us, going like, "I want it. You get out here and feed me now." Right? So yeah, they live pretty fat, happy lives. And by the time we're done, and you can pick them up and stuff like that. They love people. So by the time anybody finishes an intensive with us, they're usually taking pictures with the geese and the ducks on their laps and stuff like that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Anyway, so there's that.
Wow, what an incredible experience that you've built.
Yeah, well, it's been a long time coming, but it's a pretty fantastic space. And again, we have every conceivable form of therapy. We've got 2 rotational chairs. We have like a full physical therapy suite, I mean, I had still do have a gig with like Stock Pack and with the Navy SEALs. So we built like this big rehab space for when I get to work with, special forces guys and stuff like that. And um that's proven to be a lot of fun because now when talked about our last gig in that therapeutic process, integrating stuff, that's where we just have this massive space to just with like 20-foot ceilings to just go and do whatever the heck we want with people, and that involves all kinds of things that are super entertaining for us, and takes a little bit too long to describe, so we'll punt on that.
All right. Well, if you need an assistant next time they come through, I'm there.
Yeah, fair enough. So you know what happens when you and I get together though, right?
Well, you get kicked in the head. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So I don't know how many of your listeners or viewers know this, but I was a pretty accomplished martial artist. So am I. And anytime we wind up in town together, I get to discover the glory of her fadeaway head kick. It's
I'm
spectacular.
I'm old and stiff now. I don't think
Whatever.
my leg's gonna reach anymore. Sorry.
Still, dude, it's spectacular. Nobody's landed that on me in years other than you.
Oh, well.
So anyway, there's that.
Oh, awesome. Well, I would love to come see your new space.
Fantastic.
All right. Well, how can people find you?
So we're in Lake Oswego, Oregon, which is basically, suburban Portland. Our website is northwestfunctionalneurology.com. Um, and yeah, most people just reach out to us through there. The email is like info@northwestfunctionalneurology.com. Website, YouTube channel, all that kind of stuff. That's usually where people find us.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time. Enjoy your soiree tonight.
You have a great weekend.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day.
You too. Medical disclaimer. This video or podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is formed. The use of this information and materials included is at the user's own risk. The content of this video or podcast is not intended to be a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, and consumers of this information should seek the advice of a medical professional for any and all health-related issues. A link to our full medical disclaimer is available in the notes.